Dolphins fans, on today's show, we're talking about ESPN 7-round mock draft and the players they had going to Miami. The Dolphins have a league-low 4 draft picks, but we're going to break all 4 of those guys down on today's show, the players that were mocked to Miami in ESPN's 7-round mock draft. Let me know down in the comments, who do you want the Dolphins to draft? Is it Darnell Washington? Is it, John Michael Smith, another offensive lineman? Let me know down in the comments section. Who do you want the Dolphins to draft? Let me know down in the comments. Let's get into this ESPN mock draft. So the second round pick for the Dolphins at 51 is the Dolphins' first selection. And they have Alabama running back Jahmyr Gibbs going to the Dolphins in this mock draft. And Gibbs would be awesome. And I know that tight end is probably a bigger need. Offensive line is certainly a bigger need as well. But Jahmyr Gibbs would be really, really good in this Dolphins offense. Good pass catching back as well. You look at the stats. Average 6.1 yards per carry at Bama in 2022. 926 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, 3 receiving touchdowns, 444 receiving yards, 44 receptions for Gibbs on the year. And the Dolphins had 4 free agent running backs, and they surprisingly re-signed all of them. Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Salvon Ahmed, Myles Gaskin. And I think that rules out them signing another running back in free agency. But I don't think it rules out the Dolphins drafting a running back, and Jahmyr Gibbs would certainly be a good selection. I don't know if I would do it. It depends who's on the board. But he's certainly a great player that could contribute on this Dolphins team next year. Do you want the Dolphins to draft Jahmyr Gibbs? Type D for draft or type P for pass down in the comments section. It is the pinned comment on today's video. So when ad break comes, go down, chime in. Do you want to draft Jahmyr Gibbs? I certainly would not be against it. You know, it's funny. I could see the Dolphins drafting a running back in the second round. I could also see them not drafting a running back at all. Moving on to the Dolphins selection in round 3. Luke Schoonmaker, the tight end out of Michigan, mocked to the Dolphins here, 3rd round, 84th overall. And it's certainly not surprising to see ESPN mocking a tight end of the Dolphins because the Dolphins need to draft a tight end. You have 3 tight ends on the roster right now. On the initial 53-man roster last year, you had 5 tight ends. Here are the tight ends the Dolphins currently have on the roster. Durham Smythe, Eric Saubert, and Tanner Conner. Of course, Mike Gesicki went to New England in free agency, so you certainly have to fill that void. Saubert's a good blocking tight end, but he's not going to put up big numbers. Schoonmaker certainly put up decent numbers at Michigan this past season. 12 games played, 418 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's been linked to Miami before, and he'd be a good selection here in round 3 for the Miami Dolphins. Certainly would not mind drafting a tight end there. Speaking of the draft, Dolphins draft hats have dropped. So go and pick yours up right now at chatsports.com/Dolphins draft. Love the draft hats this year. Probably the best I've seen in recent years. They also have this flat bill one as well. Chatsports.com/Dolphins hat. A lot of different caps to choose from. That link is going to be in the comments and the description of today's video. Go and check it out. Go and get your draft cap right now. I know a lot of y'all have taken advantage of that deal we're giving you guys. Chatsports.com/Dolphins draft. Moving on to round 6 now. 197th overall. Alex Forsyth, the interior offensive lineman out of Oregon, going to the Dolphins here in ESPN's mock draft. He is a center, and you know I always like it when a center is linked to Miami. Was a 3-year starter at Oregon. Just 1 hurry, no sacks allowed in 2022. Received a Senior Bowl invitation. Was on the Pac-12 first team this past season as well. So I'm looking at this guy. I'm looking at the accolades. I'm looking at the experience. I'm like, we could get him in the 6th round? I mean, this is a guy that could be your starting center maybe after Williams leaves in free agency. If Williams leaves, in free agency next year. So I like this idea of drafting Forsyth, maybe having him be the backup center to Williams. And if Williams leaves in free agency or maybe struggles this next season, then he can be the guy. But certainly do not be surprised if the Dolphins draft a center. I know we've talked about John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota maybe being the guy in the second round. I'd be a little bit surprised if they drafted a center in the second round because I don't think John Michael Schmitz is going to be on the board. But I do feel like the Dolphins are going to look to add some center depth because Michael Dieter left in free agency. You have Dan Feeney on this roster, but he can also kind of be a guard. I think Feeney has a good shot to be the left guard on this Dolphins team next season. So Forsyth maybe could be your backup center. And again, he did not allow any sacks this past season, Oregon. 3-year starter, first-team all-conference. He'd certainly be a really good fit on this Dolphins offensive line as a depth piece, and could potentially be a 6th-round steal. Could MJ Anderson be a 7th-round steal? ESPN has the Dolphins taking him 238th overall with their 4th and final selection in this year's draft. I like Anderson as a prospect, 3.5 sacks this past season at Iowa State, 37 tackles, 9 tackles for loss. Going to be a day 3 guy, but certainly a lot of upside with Anderson, who put up pretty solid numbers this past season at Iowa State and could potentially be a guy the Dolphins target in the 7th round. Taking a look at the updated Dolphins defensive line depth chart, John Jenkins, he signed with the Raiders. A little bit disappointed to see him go, but certainly some decent options here when you're looking at maybe some day 3 guys in the defensive line, but you certainly need a little bit more of defensive line depth. As far as linebackers concerned, here's what that looks like. If the Dolphins maybe want to target a linebacker in the 7th round. Again, MJ Anderson, an edge rusher. You have Jalen Phillips as an edge rusher on this team, as well as Bradley Chubb. I do not expect Melvin Ingram to be back in free agency, but we will certainly see. Taking a look at the 4 draft picks for the Dolphins. Jahmyr Gibbs in round 2, 51st overall. Luke Schoonmaker, round 3, 84th overall. Alex Forsyth, the center out of Oregon, 6th round, 197 overall. And then MJ Anderson, the edge rusher out of Iowa State, 7th round, 238 overall. Grade ESPN's mock draft. What do you think about those 4 picks for the Dolphins? Type A, B, C, D, or F down in the comment section. What do you think about ESPN's mock draft? I'm going to give it a B. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I probably would prefer a bigger need there in the 2nd round and then maybe take a running back in the 3rd round because this is a loaded running back class. I think you could get a guy like Sean Tucker or Tyjae Spears in the 3rd round. And then I just think there's better options at the tight end position than Schoonmaker. But he's going to be probably one of the better guys in the 3rd round. I think I like Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State a little bit better. I do like those 6th and 7th round picks there, though. Certainly a lot of value with Forsyth and Anderson. Now, should the Dolphins draft a center with the first 2 picks? Type Y for yes or type N for no down in the comment section. Go down and let me know, should the Dolphins draft a center with their first 2 picks? Let me know. I would say it depends who's on the board. If John Michael Schmitz is there, then absolutely. Appreciate y'all watching today's video. We're certainly going to have you guys covered with a lot more Dolphins draft content. So go down, subscribe to the channel right now, youtube.com/DolphinsNews.